What if I told you that the life God has planned for you isn't where you're living right now? It might be somewhere far away, somewhere new. Have you ever wondered if God is calling you to move abroad? Is He stirring something in your heart to step out in faith, leave behind the familiar, and journey into the unknown? Today, we're going to dive deep into this spiritually, practically, and realistically. Let's start with the spiritual side of things, because that's the foundation, right? The Bible is full of examples of how God called people to move. Think about Abraham. God called him to leave his home, his family, and everything he knew, and go to a land that God would show him later. Talk about a leap of faith. Or the apostles who were constantly on the move, bringing the gospel to distant lands. But what about you? Are you sensing that nudge from God? Maybe you've been feeling restless. Maybe you've been praying and asking for direction, and this idea of moving abroad keeps coming up. Sometimes God stirs our hearts to leave comfort behind to fulfill a higher purpose. Isaiah 6:8 says, "Here I am, send me." It's a powerful statement of faith, and for some of you, this calling might be about being sent to a different place, possibly a place that looks nothing like where you live now. Now let's get practical and talk about the pros of moving abroad, specifically outside of the West. I know for some of you, it's a big step, but when you weigh the benefits, it could be a step worth taking. The cost of living in many countries outside the West is significantly lower. For example, according to Numbeo, places like Thailand, Portugal, and Mexico have up to 50 to 70% lower living costs than major cities in the US or the UK. Imagine having more financial freedom, fewer bills, and not being in a constant hustle to make ends meet. I've heard stories from people who've moved abroad and said they could live comfortably on half or even a third of what they were spending back home. That kind of relief can reduce stress and open up time for things that really matter, like deepening your relationship with God or pursuing passions you've had to put on hold. There's also the peace and mental health aspect. Many Western societies are fast-paced, high-pressure environments. When you move to countries that prioritize community, family, and slower living, like Costa Rica or Bali, you'll find that people are often happier and healthier. In fact, a study from the World Happiness Report ranked countries outside the West, such as Costa Rica, significantly higher in happiness than many Western nations. Less hustle, more time to breathe, reflect, and live a more peaceful life. Doesn't that sound appealing? Of course, it's not all sunshine and roses. There are cons to consider too, and we've got to be real about them. Safety is always a concern when moving abroad, and you need to do your research. Some countries may have lower crime rates, but others might have specific regions you should avoid. According to the Global Peace Index, countries like Iceland and New Zealand are ranked as the safest, but outside the West, places like Japan, Singapore, and Portugal also score highly in terms of peace and safety. On the other hand, some countries can have political instability or higher petty crime rates, so it's essential to balance safety with opportunity. Know the areas you're moving to, understand the risks, and be smart about your choices. Comfort is another biggie. It can be tough to adapt to a new culture, language, and social norms. You'll need to ask yourself, am I ready to feel out of place for a while? Am I open to learning and growing in a new environment? Living abroad can be uncomfortable, especially in the early stages. It requires patience and humility as you adapt to different foods, customs, and ways of living. But let me tell you this, many people who've made the jump have shared that it was one of the most mentally freeing experiences of their lives. They had to break out of their comfort zone, but it gave them a new perspective on life and the world. In fact, research shows that living abroad can increase creativity and flexibility in thinking. It's like a reset for your brain. You see the world differently, and sometimes you understand your place in it more clearly. So how do you know if God is calling you to move abroad? Here are a few things to ask yourself. 1. Is there a peace or stirring in your spirit when you think about it? God often speaks through peace. Do you feel a calm certainty when you pray about moving? 2. Are there opportunities aligning that point you in this direction? Maybe doors are opening in ways that make it possible, financially, career-wise, or even relationally. 3. Are you ready to be stretched? Moving abroad will stretch you, no doubt, but spiritual growth often happens when we step into the unknown. Look, this is not a decision to take lightly, but it could be one of the most transformative decisions of your life. Maybe God has a new chapter for you that's waiting in a new country, a place where you can thrive, serve, and live out your purpose in a way you couldn't where you are right now. So take time to pray, seek counsel, and weigh the pros and cons seriously. God's plan for your life is always good, even if it requires stepping out of your comfort zone. If you've been considering moving abroad, or if you've already done it, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And hey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more content like this, and share it with someone who might need to hear this today.